Hello, everybody. It's Friday, and that means it's time for another topic of the week. Short preamble, as last week's topic was just the budget of Sigmar, and there's also some discussion about airbrushing that really got a lot of traction this week, and I was very excited to see that. I'm happy to see some people made the plunge, and more should. One thing I'm not sure if I ever said in my airbrushing hobby video or elsewhere, but I've said it in a lot of comments, is that it really is the best investment I ever made. And it's not a magic wand, but it is a great tool to add to your toolkit. So, maybe instead of buying the next monster or a unit, think about taking the plunge. But let's turn to this week's topic. No reason to wait around, because this is an exciting one. Wow. Big news dropped this week, not 5 hours or 6 hours after we cut Warhammer Weekly, and which is hilarious to me. We will, of course, talk about this on next week's show, but before then, we're going to talk about it right now. And that is Games Workshop's announcement of the Speacialist Games coming back under Forge World. So building the old Speacialist Games line, things like Battlefleet Gothic and Blood Bowl and Necromunda and so on, all under sort of the Forge World division. So what an amazing piece of news. I think in general there was a lot of happiness about it. Of course there was some poo-pooing, but hey, it's the internet. What did you expect? But I know I am very excited about this. We actually did a previous topic of the week some time ago, several months back, about your other favorite game from GW, and that was, sort of effectively discussing the Specialist games. So I thought for this time, instead of talking about the old ones that we enjoyed, although that can certainly come up again, it's okay. Before we were just reminiscing. Now, it's all real. This suddenly, what we all thought was just a pipe dream not a week ago, is now completely reality, and who could have predicted it? And so what they've sort of laid out in the discussion I've seen around it has been that it will mimic the Betrayal at Tal's Cave, the Horus Heresy thing, box set that came out. I don't know 40K well enough in that time period, and I have an undying and eternal hatred of all things Space Marine, so you'll have to forgive me. But that's not what we're talking about. And so what I thought we would talk about for this topic of the week is, what do you want to see in the Specialist Games line? So this is going to be under Forge World, and they've said it's probably going to be box sets similar to sort of kick it off, though there could be supplementary minis for it through Forge World. So I picture like upgrade packs and other supporting minis and things like that, but sort of the box being the way to kick it all off. So if it were to be Blood Bowl, it'd probably be 2 or 4 teams or something like that in the play mat and whatnot. A fairly straightforward thing, easy to put in a box. And I think that's a great idea. Let me say that I think this all ties in, if you go back to the letter from the president last year when he said more games at more offerings at more price points across the spectrum. I think this is just more of that, right? So I think this is very much in line with the business strategy we should be expecting. And so what I want to know from all of you, and what I think this topic of the week is really all about, is what game is your number one you want to see brought back? And beyond that, they've also left the door open for doing new projects. So specifically in there, they mentioned some of the ones like Necromunda and Battlefleet Gothic and such, but they also said new development as well, so we could see some new Specialist games. So if you're feeling really fanciful and really imaginative, what new Specialist game would you want to see brought into this sort of line, right? I think Tom, my co-host from Warhammer Weekly, jokingly, and we'll probably talk about seriously this week on the show, that he thinks Warhammer Fantasy Battle should become a Specialist line. And I'm not sure that would not work, or perhaps I should eliminate the double negative and say that might work. I think for me, what I would love to see is something small set in the old world. That could be a Mordheim revision, but it doesn't have to be. There's a lot of great corners of the old world, And these things clearly don't need to be bound by time. Look, the product that just released was the Horus Heresy or whatever. Like I said, I don't know much about 40K, but I do know they call that 30K, and I'm pretty sure that's because that was like 10,000 years before the current time in Warhammer 40K. So clearly we can tell stories from the past and release products from the past. Like, that's on the table. Alright? It's not like we can only release products from exactly this current moment in the narrative. So I would love to see something really cool and interesting from the old world. And I think that I'd like to see different corners of the world explored. I think a fun little, of course I'm partial to Skaven, and I think a fun little like Skaven in the Under Empire, like in Skavenblight game could be pretty fun. Where you're like trying to grow your power and your control in Skavenblight and ascend up to the council. I think some kind of game where you're taking territorial control in like the Border Prince's land, and maybe show some of those Border Prince states, Antilia and Astalia, some of those lesser developed corners of the world. That could be a really neat thing to explore, and you could really package it, because it was its own nice tight little area. You could do, again, neat things with like territorial control. You'd have very unusual troops. It'd be a neat way to get some of those old favorites from like the Dogs of War troops back out there, which I would love to see recasts of things like the Birdmen of Catarazzo, Capistrano, whatever. That's not what they were called, but that's what they were knocking off. And, you know, that kind of thing. I would love to see those sorts of things get, you know, like a new treatment. I think that Border Prince's area would be rich for it. So if I had my choice, I think that's what I'd love to see as new. But, topic of the week. What do you want to see? What game do you want to see come back that's already exist? What new game would you pitch? And are you excited overall? I know I'm super excited for the Specialist Games to return. I love so many of them, and I just think it's a great thing to have them come back and to be under the Forge World division. It might mean they could be slightly more expensive, but maybe not. I mean, the Betrayal at Calth, somebody pointed out that those miniatures were certainly done by the Forge World people, and so, you know, I'm not willing to speculate on price until I see what it is. But I know I'm very excited. It could be a very cool chance to get a lot of neat corners across Games Workshop's games, explored new fun takes on old worlds or even new worlds. So, look very much forward to your responses. Very excited about this topic of the week. And as always, we'll see you next time.